Hi, welcome to a quick approach and announcement on our approach to producing the RiskRubric AI web project. It's a simple project that focuses on applying a risk score to all LLM models. First, let's start with an introduction. I'm Caleb Sima. I'm the chair of the AI Security Alliance. Let me have Mike, my partner here, introduce himself.
Thank you, Caleb. I'm Mike Machado, career CISO by day and RiskRubric AI product manager by night. Back to you, Caleb.
Awesome. Okay, so let's kick it off. So, what is RiskRubric.ai? Well, it is a index of every model, or particularly every LLM model, that we can find in a scorecard in a risk format. So, why did we do this? Well, one of the things, as we obviously know, is LLMs have exploded and AI is here for the stay. And as I've talked to both security practitioners and security teams, one of the biggest challenges that they have is, well, what do we do? How do we trust LLMs? How do we know what a model is a good model versus a bad model? And so today, most people are just sort of doing this on a whim of saying, well, if it's Anthropic, OpenAI, or Google, then it's something that I trust because these are basically the primary frontier model providers. However, when you dig into the engineering environment is much, much bigger than your three frontier models. In fact, when you go deep into that, you have perhaps tens, 20s, maybe even 50s different types of models that are being used. And as we go forward in the future, we're going to start seeing more specialized models, smaller models that are going to be more focused. We are seeing right now, at least at the time of this presentation, an explosion of open weight models coming from all over the world that are either meeting or matching or even exceeding the capabilities of these large frontier models. And so as you look at both sort of what the security team is trying to figure out, but versus what engineering is trying to do, you need something to say when engineers come to you, hey, we want to use this model. Is this safe? How do you answer that? And so that is why we came up with this. And what it is we've gone through all of the models that you can think of in terms of the most popular models being used, and we have applied this transparent scorecard. So we looked at assessing every model, creating a trustworthy AI standard that can kind of create this global benchmark for these trust scores. And in part of being able to do this, we went out and said, who are some of the best people in the industry and the smartest in terms of AI to help us and collaborate with us to build this? And we identified three phenomenal companies. First, Haize Labs. They are an expert in AI red teaming. They do some of the best AI red teaming in the world, and they do it for all the frontier models across the board, plus very, very large enterprises. These guys are some of the best in terms of identifying what a model can do versus what it can't do. We also connected with Noma Security. They are an expert in the SDLC for AI. So when you think about the AI pipeline, the development, and how AI is built, these guys are phenomenal teams focused on solving these security problems. And finally, Harmonic Security. They focus on what is AI and the data of AI. Where does it exist in your enterprise? How do you identify it? And how do you ensure that the right things are going to AI? So these three guys, combined with Cloud Security Alliance, came together to help build and put together the LLM report card, which is the risk rubric today. So let's start digging into that. First, let's start about our product overview. So what we wanted to build was an ability to go to a site, type in whatever model name you wanted, return back a friendly report card that showed you the exact grade of what we determined to be a great model versus a terrible model. And we needed to do this in a really friendly form. So we just gave it an A through F score. So you could say it's an A model through an F model. And you could look at it and immediately tell what was going on, why it was scored this way, and so that you have some sort of something to point to say whether it's high risk or low risk. And we went ahead and created the 10 highest and models that had the best models versus the 10 lowest models. And we've created these against 6 risk pillars that will show you exactly why it's graded A through F. So let's take a look at that now. So here's an example of just sort of what it sort of looks like in a very simplistic level of being able to say high score models versus low score models. Obviously on the website you're going to see far more than this little snippet of a screenshot shows you, but you can see, okay, we know that Llama 3.1 either at a larger parameter level versus a lower parameter level can differ in scores. You can also see 10 lowest scoring models where you've got probably models you've never heard of receiving pretty low scores in terms of both its trust and its risk. And then why is that? Well, as you go through and click, you might, for example, pick Llama 3. And you notice that we've got these 6 pillars: transparency, reliability, security, privacy, safety, and reputation. And we'll go through these details to say, for example, in Llama 3 on transparency, we see that it actually gets a B score in this risk pillar. It has great information, but there is licensing information that's incomplete, unclear, or contradictory. You have property disclosure status, AI statuses when offering questions. Complete data image and dataset documentations are publicly available. So there are good things from a transparency perspective about Llama 3, which gives it a pretty decent score. It gets a reliability score of A because it has great consistency of outputs, good accuracy, and good resistance to hallucinations. So as we go through each of these pillars, there'll be extended details about why it matched these pillars and what it failed at versus what it passed at, as long alongside with recommendations on actionable guidance for these.
If I can jump in, right? There was a journey getting here. It was so much fun. I mean, one of the most exciting aspects was the partnering across all of our respective organizations, the iterative learning and work in collaboration, right? It all started for me having an initial conversation with Caleb, understanding your vision, and then realizing we're going to need to turn this into a living, breathing application. I knew from conversations with others that they were less familiar with some of the concepts behind this and some of what came before, right? So there was an initial bringing everyone together. That was a very exciting part of the project. Let's get us all aligned. Let's get us all on the same page. From there, we needed product requirements, right? In the previous 2 slides, Caleb kind of described a series of requirements. We wanted report cards, we wanted a leaderboard, we wanted risk scoring, these types of things. So this was a really fun opportunity for me to roll up my sleeves, develop a PRD. And then we needed to derive these 6 pillars. We've gone through narrower versions of this, right? And said, no, that's too narrow. We've gone through wider, more expansive versions of this, saying that's too boil the ocean. So we consolidated on these 6 themes being in our collective view the most important pillars of trust and risk and assurance in models to communicate to our customers, to our audience, right? There's been a number of there's been work under the hood, right, to really map these across these concepts to tangible tests, tangible indicators to be able to derive this scorecard. Back to you, Caleb.
Yeah, excellent point. And so, taking this, how does it work? So Mike, I'll pass it to you on sort of digging into a little bit about taking each of these pillars and what do they really consist of.
Thank you. So really it all starts with a code of conduct, right? The code of conduct is essentially the behavior that we want models to exhibit and behaviors we don't want models to exhibit. This is a concept that came from Haize Labs. It's part of how their product and their technology works. And we work together across all of our organizations to build one that would be consistent across all of the models that we're testing as part of RiskRubric, right? You can see some tangible examples here. There are, of course, more tests, more behaviors that we want to look for and that we want to look at, we want to avoid. But here are some examples. Can do we reject requests to generate content that's deceptive or inaccurate? Are we rejecting requests to generate content that might endanger personal safety? Are we exposing personal information? There's various behaviors that we want to elicit or attempt to elicit for each of these pillars.
And just one thing to also note, code of conduct can obviously be a very context sort of aspect of things. But what we did in our assessment of this is we said generically when we think of the larger enterprise or the standard enterprise, these are kind of baseline standards that we should have. Obviously, models can be used for many things. A great example might be you could be a security product company and you may want a model that absolutely quote unquote misbehaves. The ability to be able to emit very fraudulent or have the ability to be manipulative in terms of what its benefits are. So obviously what we're doing here is we're scoring that model as low because for the standard enterprise in their basic aspects of code of conduct, we are saying, hey, most of them don't want to do this. And so also take into understanding the context of how we tested it this way.
Great point. I'll double click on context. One of the things we learned as we were going through this process is that certain failures, certain outputs are sometimes aligned with more than one pillar, right? And so that was interesting as well. Uh, the observation that it's not always binary. This is only related to privacy. This is only related to security. This is only related to safety. So in our mapping, which we'll kind of cover a bit in the next slide or two, when that happened, we rolled it up to essentially the pillar that was most significant with regard to the behavior we were observing. But it is worth calling out that contextually, uh, issues with a model can overlap between the various pillars. So we talked a bit about how it works. Here's some tangible examples, right? When Haize goes through specifically and does the red teaming, outputs come from that. As we were exploring this notion of the pillars and also how risk scoring applications in general work, it became clear we needed to do more than just red teaming models, right? We needed to collect various other forms of data. One of the things that Noma custom built for our application is an open source data collector, right? So you'll see at the very top, one of the uh, uh, elements that we assess comes from open source intelligence. As we derive these pieces of information, right? These data elements, we then map them to the different pillars that we're looking to assess. Is this related to transparency? Is it related to privacy? Is it related to reliability? And we also realize that there are indicators within this data that tell us, it's the model's doing something favorable, it's doing something unfavorable. So we, align that to our overall scoring and calibration as well.
I'll jump in and say a little bit on the OSINT part. One of the things when we were talking with other security teams that they were doing is a very simple measurement was, an engineer was like, hey, we want to use this more specialized model. The real simple question is, well, who's it made by? Like who manages and maintains this model? Is it just some random person on the internet that uploaded it to Hugging Face and that's what we're going to rely on? That really gives a lot of red flags. Or is it a large open model with a large community around it that clearly both manages it, maintains it, and has some good reputation behind it? These are all things that I thought the OSN thing becomes a really big part or a factor of taking a model that may be unknown and determining, hey, whether this thing could or could not be trusted, right? By who maintains it, what's the reputation of its maintained? Do they have great documentation that's kept up to date? Does it have a large community that everyone really works and tries to do something great with? All of these things really add up to something that says, well, I don't know about this model. Let's not just test how the model behaves, but also how is the model built and exactly what are they talking about and who are the maintainers and the reputation of the maintainers. And so a lot of that is built into this, which really was really part of an important part of aspect of building this risk model.
Absolutely. You know, the word rubric is not just in the name. There really is a tangible rubric behind, how we assess, how we score, how we rate the models. Um, and we hope this gives you, insight into how we're doing it. Tell us what you want to see. This is something we built for the community. Caleb, introduced it and mentioned that this is a tangible, day-to-day, week-to-week problem that many teams and many individuals are encountering. We obviously have ideas. We built this over a very short time period to be able to release it quickly and provide value. But we know there's more that we can do. We have ideas. You have ideas. We want to hear from you, right? Do you want expanded analytics? Do you want additional evidence? Do you want enterprise features? Do you want us giving some form of seal of assurance? This model gets an A grade, trust mark type of thing, or I hope things that we haven't even thought of yet that you all are going to tell us you'd like us to add to add more value and enrich our application.
And I think our only goal, at least in this initial phase of at least putting this out there, is that at least now there's a place where you can go to engineering and say, any model that is rated an A or B, I approve. That you can set in your security guidelines. And I think that is at least a huge benefit versus what we have today, which you basically just have to figure it out, right? Like, and say, well, let's do it. Like our AppSec team has to test it, or we got to review it. It's way, way easier to say in our policy, any model now that on the risk rubric is A or B can be approved by us. And if we can at least map that in our phase one release here, I think we've found success. And as we move forward in this roadmap, there's a lot more to do here. Obviously, there's a lot more we can apply this. It's not just to LLM models, but to other models across the board in terms of what other providers may offer. It can even go to MCP servers in the future, where that is also becoming a big risk and reputation area. Anywhere that we can start applying this risk rubric can go across the board in many different areas.
Absolutely. And the inverse is also true, right? You'll find yourselves, of course, uh, pushing back or having concerns about models that people within your organizations want to use. And now you'll have some information as to why you have concerns or why you need to introduce guardrails, should you proceed with that model, because not everything's an A and a B.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, Mike, thank you guys for listening and looking forward to any feedback that you have. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
as well, Caleb. Bye, everyone.